There
There we
it is.
go. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We are thrilled that you are here for today's session called Empowered Teams, Empowered SLPs, Tools for Supervising, not surprising, supervising new grads and SLPAs. So just as a warm up, yesterday I had the chance to speak with the lead SLP. Is the kind of conversation I honestly hope to have with many of you, whether you're an SLPA, CFY, lead SLP admin, whatever you are. It was a great conversation. She is supervising several clinical fellows, many assistants, even a contractor or two thrown in there. She's the only full-time experienced SLP on her team this coming school year and last school year. So, her ultimate goal is to run a relatively tight ship. And it's not really for her, it's more for them. Because as we all know, these systems that we have in a school, I mean, it can be chaotic, right? I mean, caseloads are heavy. Processes are often loosely defined. We all know that, especially in the speech world and the SPED world. The new staff, we come in, we're often left to figure it out on our own. And let's be honest, like as new grads, we're coming in, we don't really know how to be intentional with therapy planning. We try to learn, we try to teach that in grad school. It's hard. It's hard to do that and until we're out there in the real world. It's something we just mostly learn through experience. And then there's this concept of data collection, right? What does it mean to take meaningful data? It's tricky. It's something that we need. It's something that data is something that we need to actually drive our decisions with our students. So when everyone's tracking using different things inconsistently, or dare I say, not tracking at all, which believe it or not is actually happening, things get messy fast. And so, it's tricky. Teachers often have curriculum. They have things to guide them. They have structure and consistency that we lack in the special education world in a lot of sense. For us in speech, it feels a lot like uncharted territory. So for many of us, we need more. We have a lot of new, overwhelmed clinicians. We need clearer directions, direction for that, and a place for. We need expectations that are clear, tools, strategies, and that's what today is about. Giving you tools to lead with confidence, helping your team to feel supported, aligned, and successful from day one. Yeah, from day one. Okay, so yeah, welcome to our session today. I'm Steph. I work closely with districts across the country who are navigating this new reality of supporting layered speech language staffing models. Think more SLPAs, more clinical fellows, more new grads, fewer veterans SLPs. And I'll let Perry introduce herself.
Hi there, I'm Perry. I am also a former school-based SLP and really experienced firsthand how demanding the workload is for providers in schools. So I use that experience now to work closely with our Amplio speech and language users to support them when using our online digital tools.
Yeah, so today we're going to really unpack what it looks like to support lead SLPs and supervisors and how having a solid system can bring the consistency, the quality, the compliance we need without burning people out. So Perry and I aren't speaking just from theory. Like before stepping into our current roles, and my current role is really relatively new to me, we both served as managers and SLP team roles, team leads, myself, even just this last school year as a team lead. We've been in these trenches. We were overseeing teams, managing complex workloads, navigating the never-ending spreadsheet, right? Service minutes, caseloads, data. And now in our current roles, we get the opportunity to collaborate with team leads a lot, listening to, learning from team leads, those types of things across districts. So I'm usually involved in those early conversations. I do discovery and assessment to understand what they need to support their assistants and their CFYs. And Perry, she's right there in that support role, helping teams adopt the tools and actually use them in a way that works day to day with their teams. So while we're sharing from our own experiences, also know that we're also bringing the insights and the strategies for many of these leads SLPs in the districts that we've had the amazing opportunity to learn from along the way. So we're here to share what we see working from them, not just ourselves and our experiences from them as well. Okay, so what's really hard right now? Yes, the slide. What's really hard right now, because it is, we're seeing this real shift now in the makeup of our teams and what our teams look like. I think back to when I graduated, it was back in 2007 as a CFY, and it looked so different back then. Many districts are growing their SLPA and their CF pipelines out of necessity. It's just pure necessity. Retirements, ongoing staffing shortages. That means a lot of teams are made up of entirely new folks to the field. And even just the fact you think of COVID, you think of the fact that the population has grown, the number of students alone is larger in these school districts. Just the number of referrals to SPED, which our next series in our webinar is even lens into that, that we can talk about then. There's just so many reasons, you guys, that we have this situation that we're in now. But if we look and think back to just how the layered staffing model looks, the layered, the way that the teams tend to look, you've got real pressure on these supervisors. You have these team models where, I think back to even just mine last year where I'm a team lead, I'm juggling my own caseload. And now, we're expected to guide, we're expected to coach, we're expected to manage others. So the problem, we're often doing it without consistent tools or systems in place. I mean, we're trying, we're giving it all our all. We want that system, but different people are using different methods. We have stacks of papers everywhere, spreadsheets that don't match. Oh, I had that problem, the spreadsheets. I had this spreadsheet here, and it's all over the place, and I'm a pretty organized person. I mean, I'm a really type A person, but it just wasn't all in one place, and there was just no clear way to track what's working. And so there's things slipping through the cracks, I'm like, I know this isn't working. I know there's got to be a better way, but I don't really know how to do it. And so that opens the door to some real risks: inconsistency, compliance issues, slower student progress, and frankly, burnout, right? Burnout for everyone, for your staff, for the people trying to hold it together. So, let's take a look. Let's talk about how we can shift that. And so Perry's going to help us out here. She's going to help us run a poll. Go ahead, take it away, Perry.
Yes, let me, our guest, Stephanie, if you want to introduce the
Yeah.
poll, I will.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So this poll here, what is, and I've got some ideas. I know I've got some things that I have that are on my mind. What's the biggest challenge that you or your lead SLP face, you think, when supporting newer team members? So go ahead and pop in your possible answer. And I've got a few that I'm thinking of, but give it your go. What do you think? Give it another minute. See if
Can
that.
see time to supervise. Yeah, definitely.
Mhm. Yeah, just finding the time to allot to be able to dedicate the time to give to the people that you're trying to manage. That's a good one for sure. For sure. That makes sense. Allocating that time.
And consistent delivery.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And by that, I'm kind of thinking you mean like when you don't have a solid system in place, it can be like there's not a method, right? So it can be hard maybe to be consistent with how you're doing things, maybe. is what that might mean. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then, of course, like the planning support
Okay.
and unclear roles. So I know you had
Okay.
mentioned that.
Okay. And then another one with time to supervise. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it seems like we're all feeling
Okay.
the same thing, the
All
same
right.
similar things.
Yeah. All right. So as we kind of take a look at, our next slide here, what SLPs, what our supervisor SLPs actually need. If we want our lead SLPs and our supervisors to thrive, what we need to give them more of is more than just responsibility. They need full supports, right? Role clarity, like who's doing what's actually reasonable to expect. Most of the lead SLPs that I talk to, and I feel very fortunate that I get to talk to a lot of them. And what I find is that most of them really want to guide. They really want to be able to provide and to be a role model and to provide that assistance to, whether it's an early career clinical fellow, a CFY, or whether it's an assistant. They want to provide that structure and they want to provide that guidance. They do, they really do, but they need structured tools to be able to do that. And, a couple people answered that time to supervise. They do find that it is difficult to find the time to supervise, but what they also find is they don't have structured tools to be able to do that for their newer team members. That's hard to carve time out but then those structured tools are hard to provide. Lessons, plans, materials that don't need to be built from scratch. They don't they don't have those things. They need easy access to see what's happening, to give feedback, to stay aligned without chasing papers, reinventing systems. Everybody kind of beats to their own drum, if you will. So there's no real solid system in place. So it's very hard to track them, right? Each individual person. And so that's difficult for them. And most importantly, perhaps they need a way to scale their mentorship, to support assistants and CFs without constant handholding, because it's hard to handhold when we talked about how bloated our caseloads are and how much there is to do in the current state of our schools these days. So Perry and I wouldn't be here if we didn't truly believe in the role that digital tools can play in making that possible. And, it's interesting how in the general education world, having two boys of my own, I see these digital tools play heavily in the general education world, but digital tools are kind of new in the special education forefront, but they have made huge waves in general education and helping, you know, accessibility, helping structure the way education works. And so they give us back time as educators for the parts of our work that matter the most. They truly do. So, in a note about what tools look like in practice, whether you're a teacher with some of those tools in general education or in these roles in SPED, is and practice from someone who has used digital tools as a speech pathologist for the past 4 years, even the past school year, because I held a caseload and I was a team lead, is that digital tools have their place, especially amongst our students who are growing up in a digital age. We're not replacing the human side of therapy. We're supporting it. If it's used intentionally and with purpose, we are supporting it. We truly are. And so it's got its place. It's got its place, and my son likes to tell me I'm getting with the times. And it's true, our students are growing up digital. Supervisors are seeing this generation gap, and they want to use these tools too to meet this moment and set their teams up with success. These new grads that are coming out want to use these tools. So with that, I want to pass it along to Perry because she's going to show you what looking and using some of these tools can look like in action. So take it away, Perry.
Thank you. So I'll take the next several minutes to show y'all how Amplio Speech and Language directly addresses the challenges Steph has spoken about today. and how Amplio can be a tool to strengthen the working relationship between supervisors and supervisees. So Amplio helps streamline all the processes required for team members, starting with ready-to-use therapy materials. Our users can start saving time from the very beginning at the planning stage. Amplio has over 10,000 activities researched and designed by SLPs that covers what we see most on our students' needs and on our caseloads, like speech sound disorders, phonological processes, language disorders, pre-literacy skills. And now, to support consistent, high quality intervention, we all know it's crucial to provide therapy materials that are both structured and grounded in evidence-based practices. When those materials also include embedded instructional guidance like prompts and cues and modeling tips, they don't just support the student, but they also support the clinician as well. And that's exactly what Amplio has to offer. This is, of course, beneficial for any well-experienced SLP or educator, but it's also especially helpful for SLPAs, new clinicians, anyone covering a caseload temporarily. The instructional materials that are available really ensure that the therapy stays aligned with best practices, even when experience levels vary across the team. So, and then they also help ensure the necessary continuity for the students who are actively learning these skills. And then as we've spoken about today, generally speaking, to ensure effective and compliant service delivery, it's essential to clearly define the roles and expectations for each member involved up front. So when we outline those roles and expectations at the very beginning, as a team, we reduce confusion, support collaboration, and stay aligned with any state and ASHA guidelines. This means, distinguishing what licensed SLPs are responsible for from what SLPAs or CFs or any other staff members can support with. So as many of us have experience, setting clear expectations and supervisory structures really help build the confidence across the team members and maintains quality. With Amplio, you can mirror the established roles between the team members, as you can see here. This feature allows educators to share the students, meaning each team member has the visibility of student assignments, session notes, ongoing data for progress monitoring. So in this picture here, you can see Natalie Brown is the example. She is the supervising SLP, and she has a student clinician named Benny who's working with a subset of her caseload. So you can see his name listed as an educator for some of the students that they're sharing in addition to Natalie's caseload. Furthermore, team members can easily preview activity assignments or assist with creating therapy plans. So each team member can monitor student progress, provide one another with feedback as needed. And this high level of visibility and collaboration truly streamlines workflows rather than creating extra administrative burden on anyone, because we've all got enough of that. So overall, when the process is streamlined, supervision becomes more efficient, more actionable, and ultimately more supportive for the providers working together and also for the students that they serve. Now, just to further clarify, because I know this question kind of comes up a lot, the educators on Amplio have their own accounts, of course, and then the students also have their own accounts, and you can use them in a few different ways. So the educator's account is what like an SLP, for example, would have, or SLPA, but whatever educator is using it would have that account. That allows them to do the therapy planning and progress monitoring and documentation that I've spoken about. They can also create and run an actual session with the students from their own device, meaning they can display the digital therapy materials to the students on their own, laptop or desktop, or use a projector for a larger display on the wall or an interactive whiteboard. So all in all, the educator account can run a session and collect the data from their own device and account, and then in addition to the more managerial tasks that are not student-facing, like the planning and data and documentation. Then separately, as I mentioned, the students have their own accounts on Amplio as well. So you could elect to have your small group in the same classroom as you, kind of like you can see in the picture here. You could have all the students enter their own individual Amplio accounts on their own individual devices, if that's available, like a tablet or Chromebook. So students from their accounts, when they log on, they can only access the activities that have been assigned to them, and that's it. They don't have any visibility into like the session notes or progress data or any other student assignments and goals. So they can complete those activities that are assigned to them with you while still in the therapy room or one-on-one setting in a little small group, whatever your schedule looks like, and that way they're completing them on their own devices. Alternatively, you can also ask the students to access their student accounts when you've assigned homework or independent practice. So that's a great tool for really a lot of reasons. You can, use that to reduce or prevent regression over a long break from school. Maybe it's used to promote generalization, or if the kids are working from home, it's a great way to get parental support and involvement in the therapy process. So now I've alluded to the visibility of the student data, so I do want to touch on that real quick. You can take we all know that tracking student progress is essential, but too often supervisors are, chasing it down and wasting a lot of time chasing down the data from different places, different sources, or from different staff members and colleagues. So with built-in progress tracking features, the data is collected and organized automatically right where it's needed within Amplio. So this gives the supervisors immediate visibility into student outcomes, therapy fidelity, and overall caseload performance without the extra emails and spreadsheets and follow-ups. Amplio is all about making the data easy to access so supervision can stay focused on the support. And efficient supervision also means making it easy to stay on top of documentation. So when supervisors can quickly review the session notes, they're able to ensure accuracy, provide feedback, step in when needed without having to dig through files or chasing down updates. And if they're responsible for finalizing the documentation, supporting or, submitting the notes for Medicaid billing or writing IEPs, having everything in one place really streamlines the process and helps ensure the compliance. And so overall, this saves time, reduces errors, and keeps the focus where it belongs, which is supporting the students and the fellow providers you're working with. So with all of that said, we are going to take a real live look into Amplio speech and language as well, so you can kind of gain a better understanding and picture of all that I have mentioned so far. So let's move over here, and I think y'all can see program library. So first things first, as I already mentioned, Amplio offers ready-to-use therapy materials, all in a digital format. So the materials here are organized into programs, as you can see in the program library. There are 17 programs available right now, and 3 of which are in Spanish. So it's easy to browse and preview any of the contents within a program. You'll just simply click into one, like WOW, for example, which is one of our articulation programs. And then you can continue clicking into the folders to find exactly what it is you're looking for. So let's say I'm looking for initial R, or my student's working on initial R at the sentence level. I can preview the activities based on the activity list here on the left. I have stimuli options for 1-syllable words, 2-syllable words, and 3 or more syllable words. So that's great to have it broken down from the very beginning like that. I can preview the activities by clicking over here. And you can see we have options for photographs, if that is more appealing to oftentimes some of the older students. And then you also have the option to use icons. So that's sometimes better for the younger kids, but you can switch it up as needed. So love to have the options ready to go. You don't have to pull out all the flashcards. From this page, you can also preview skill instruction. So these are the instructional guidance materials like the prompts and cues and modeling tips that I mentioned earlier. So for the R phoneme here, we're currently looking at, I have written strategies right at my fingertips that we can easily review or teach the students. And then there's also visuals for placement and some practice words. So this is great to have on hand, especially for those new clinicians as they're starting out. I feel like when I started out, the instruction side was lacking out there. There's plenty of therapy materials, but not a lot of the instruction. Now, it's also from this page that you can assign the students their individualized activities. So as you find the activity that you want to assign to the kids, you can easily assign it to a whole group or individual students, and this expedites that planning process. You spend less time or no time at the copier, at the printer, finding things online and downloading, so that expedites everything. Let's see, we're gonna take a look at Sparkle too. So y'all can see another program that is based in our early literacy or pre-literacy skills. So you can see a little bit more outside of just articulation. And we'll look at word segmentation. So you can see the layout is consistent, which helps when you're looking through things and browsing. Again, the skill instruction materials are ready to preview and use with students. So you've got the word segmentation, for example, all the visual cues and prompts that you can utilize with the kiddos. So I find this really helpful. And then we can take a look at some of the stimuli here. So this is a sample activity of what you'd work on with a student in the segmenting words. So one thing that really sets Amplio apart from other digital therapy tools is the ability that it tracks the data for you. So as you can imagine, if I were in a session with a student or a small group, they'd be presented with the activities specifically assigned to them, but it would still look like this. During the session together, each time they can make their selections as their answers, and then each time we click submit on an activity that's assigned to the student, the system will log that response in the student's profile. So this means that the educator or clinician, whoever's running the session, no longer has to do all the multitasking nearly as much as usual, because I don't have to keep up with my own data tracking sheets in real time with the students present. Sometimes it's a little mentally overwhelming, right? Especially if you have a group of, 5 or 6 students. So you can maintain the focus on the kids, give appropriate feedback or prompting rather than making tally marks on all the spare paper or printed tracking sheets. And on top of that, you don't even have to actually do manual digital, a digital tally counter or tracker. On Amplio, again, every time you submit the answer, it is recording it as correct or incorrect and logging it for you, so you can spend your focused time with the students. So as I said, it recognizes the incorrect and correct responses, and then it'll calculate the accuracy score for you, which will all be available in the student's profile. Additionally, a session note will automatically be generated as well based on the activity and the accuracy that they've achieved. So we will take a look at that next. So I'll navigate over to my caseload list. You can see all your students listed here, and we'll open Aiden Garcia's student profile. So this, I know y'all saw a little picture of this earlier. This is where any team member assigned to the student can view what activities have been assigned to this particular kiddo, Aiden. You can see the student's progress within the activity, their scores, and session notes. So you can see the supervising SLP up here. Natalie Brown is who I'm logged in as right now, and she is assigned as the student's primary educator. Benny is the secondary educator. So to carry over our example from earlier, Benny is Natalie's grad student clinician. So you can easily see that they both have access to the same information and planning side. So if I were Natalie, the supervising SLP, I'd be able to view these assignments as well as contribute to them. It can add to the queue, rearrange the queue as needed, and support Benny as he's gaining more and more independence. Now to loop back to scores and data tracking that I mentioned when we were looking at the activity, I can click into scoring status for this articulation activity that Aiden completed. So having Aiden's overall accuracy tracked for me right at the top, you can see I was not lying or fooling you. It calculated right at the top, so you have that view from the very beginning. And then below that is the itemized accuracy. So you can see the list of the target words that Aiden practiced, and you can see how he did, correct or incorrect. And you also have the audio recording of his production, which is a great tool to use with the student if they're at a point in time where they can listen to their responses and judge, or you can use it when you're reviewing data, use it in a team meeting or with parents to show progress. So it's great to have those audio recordings in one spot and saved in a secure place. Now, the system, as I said, also will auto-generate the session notes each time you work with a student in Amplio. So we'll take a look at Aiden's logged notes. These are auto-generated, so every time you complete a session in Amplio, it's saved in here. The system will log the date and time and duration of the session, as you can see. And in this case, these are all of Aiden's. So you can click on any particular date, and this is the information that the system will populate for you. You've got the student name, educator name, when the session occurred, what therapeutic materials and skill interventions were used, and the objective data, of course, of what the student achieved. So these notes will be safely stored, giving the clinician or SLP the flexibility to review them when the time is appropriate, and then easily copy over the notes into their required record-keeping system or service log for compliance or billing. And I don't want to forget to mention, these are also editable, so if you wanted to add anything to it, you certainly could. But it at least gives you all of this to start.
Although I had one district SLP tell me she loved the consistency of because it was one of those things where it pre-populates this note. It wasn't so much that everybody was writing a completely different style of note. The consistency of these auto-generated notes created the consistency of the note being written, which was
Right. Yeah,
nice
that's
for
so true.
their, yeah, sorry to interrupt, Perry, keep going. You're doing it.
No. That's a really good point.
But it
Yeah.
was a recent, feedback that I thought that makes sense, actually.
Yeah. And then last but certainly not least, we've got the case, we can look at caseload reports. So caseload overview is super beneficial for that bird's eye view of the caseload. You can immediately see which student I as Natalie am responsible for and which students I'm sharing with Benny as the student clinician. And of course, clicking on a student's name will open up their own little individualized report. So we'll take a look at this student's, Abigail Thompson. So this is a fantastic visual tool to use as a supervisor when you're reviewing progress data on your own or with a supervisee or with other team members. And you can easily see, how a particular student is progressing based on the target skills they've been working on, which of course are based on their IEP goals or objectives. And you can easily view this and review it as needed for each kiddo. Additional management tools are available also for our users. We'll look at session summaries too. So session summaries are great. You can quickly pull session notes in bulk for a specific student or for a specific date range or one single date. So I'll show y'all, we can do for this group of third graders, let's say I needed to pull like all of their session notes into one place for the whole school year. I can quickly press generate report and boom, all of the notes pertaining to Abigail, Andrew, and Daniel are all in one place. And this makes it, easier to copy and paste, or if I'm trying to, it's the end of the school year and you need to, file them in the SPED file, there's a plethora of reasons why you would need to pull these together, but it does save a lot of time and a lot, you don't have to do all the copying and finding all of this information. It's great that it can be pulled so instantaneously. And then finally, the progress data. This functions similarly to what we just looked at with the with the session summaries, but this pulls together the progress data that's usually needed for progress reporting time at the end of each grading period, or when you need to talk about progress data for an annual IEP review. So I'll just select the same group of students again. We've got these 3 kiddos, and I'm just going to do for the full school year again for simplicity. And it will pull together the progress data for each student selected. Hopefully my Wi-Fi is working. Voila. So you can see for this date range, you can immediately see the number of sessions completed within the specified time frame, the student's overall accuracy for based on the target skills that they've been working on, and then you'll also see the accuracy percentage based on the last 3 sessions with a little mastery classification note as well. So this is super beneficial for, like I said, the progress reporting time at the end of the grading periods. I remember when I was in the schools, it would take me an entire day at the very least to do the progress reports for my whole caseload, but oftentimes more than one day. So there was just a lot of shuffling papers, calculating these percentages on my own, creating graphs and writing little subjective blurbs. So, overall very, very time consuming and exhausting. So this feature I really personally love because I'm set up for efficiency so that all I'm left to do is copy and paste this into the individual, progress report template and add anything if I need to, and then end my day at a reasonable hour and not spend 2+ days on progress reports. But that concludes really the look at the platform, and I think we're doing okay on time.
Okay.
So I'm going to
Hey,
flip
Perry,
back.
real quick, can I ask a quick question? Because I do have a lead SLP that's going to be watching the live recording after the fact, and she asked me about independent practice. Can you quickly, just because I know she's going to review the recording, she pinged me late yesterday and asked about independent practice. Can you talk just one moment briefly about what that is?
Yeah, so when you are in a student profile, for example, there is a little toggle for on and off of the independent practice. So if there are activities that you want your students to be practicing when they're not in the therapy room with you, so for homework, generalization, if they're at a point in time where they can practice on their own independently from the classroom or with another provider, you can turn on the independent practice toggle. It's pretty easy to just turn off and on with a little simple click. And then that way, when the student logs on to their profile or their account on Amplio, they can easily work through that activity on their own without you being present. But if you have independent practice turned off and that's only the, activities you're going to work on together, then they wouldn't be able to see that. So maybe you want them to independently practice the word level, or the word level, but not, at the phrases or sentences yet, then you can turn off those activities. Does that kind of help clarify?
I think so.
Yes. Okay, let's see. Let's see what's next. Oh, yes. So we've got a summary of an interview from one of our SLPA users in Greenville ISD in Texas. Her name is Nichelle Addy, and her caseload has been ever growing, and she works with a supervising SLP who is not like physically on her campus every day. But together they've been able to implement a workflow that works for them, and it significantly reduces the time it was taking for Nichelle to plan for these larger groups of students, because her small groups have kind of grown to sometimes up to 8 kids at once, and that's a lot to juggle with so many different goals, so many different behaviors and personalities going on. So she was really able to reduce her planning time to just 30 or 60 minutes a week, which is pretty significant. The majority of her caseload was engaged on Amplio's platform, so that way she's able to, really focus on the kids who can attend on a computer or a device. And then, some of her students, it's not applicable for, maybe they're too young. So she can focus on those groups as well and really differentiate based on their needs. Able to give the students in the bigger, if you have up to 8 kids in a group, it's difficult to give them enough at bats or enough practice items. And she was really able to give them significantly more turns and at bats when they were in the therapy room with her, because they were completing thousands upon thousands of exercises and not having to take individual turns and kind of slowing down the process. The instant access to progress data also assisted her in making data-driven decisions with her supervising SLP while planning ahead for the upcoming therapy groups. And then ultimately, she was able to confidently make discharge decisions with her SLP too, because the evidence and data was so accessible and sufficient and accurate on top of that. So just a little note from a real user. And I think is Stephanie.
Oh my gosh, it is 41 minutes in. I mean, speech therapists, we like to talk, right? So we're right. So we're getting close on time here. What does this unlock? We've got just a couple minutes left and we want to get you on your way. We know it's been a long bit here. So what does this all mean? I mean, this is really higher quality instruction across the board. That's what this is. I mean, and it's whether you're an SLPA, you're a CF, you're seasoned SLP, everyone has access to the same strong foundation here. I mean, it's stronger onboarding for your early career staff. It leads to stronger, better retention. People, they tend to stay when they feel supported and they're set up to succeed. Supervisory SLPs, you're going to feel less overwhelmed, more effective. I just love the fact that like everyone can see and visualize the same thing on a student profile. I love the fact that you can have all these educators on the same profile, just that consistency alone versus having different people having different access to, different things. This is all the collaborative, feel here it leads to greater compliance, fidelity. Those types of things. There's consistency in how interventions are delivered and how data is collected. We talked about the consistency in the session note. This content, that we see here, it was not just thrown together. It's curated, created by SLPs. Even in the instructional, practice, that mouth that you see of that video, that is an SLP's mouth. That is an ASHA certified mouth. That is actually an SLP on there. That was created by an SLP. And so there's meaning to that, I think. There is in that. So there's also room for individuality here, guys. Like I use this for the past 4 years. I use it just this past year in my caseload with my kids. Just because we're using these digital tools, it does not mean that we're not therapists, that we're not, still using our stuff and our ability to teach, to scaffold, to work with our students, to be there with them in the room. That is not lost. That is all fully intact. So I use this tool personally myself, and I can say that it took away a lot of the headache. It took away that data collection. It made that piece, that headache, more automatic so that I was able to focus on my students and do what I do best. So I heavily believe in that. I believe that digital tools allow us to do what we do well better. And I think that that is something that we need to get on board with moving forward. And so what I've seen is that when you have a solid system in place, you have better retention, you have stronger compliance, you have higher quality instruction across the board. So we'll open it up to questions. We have just maybe about a minute left, and if there's no questions that we have really to address, we can just move on to set up just our last little slide here. But I know a couple people put in some questions beforehand, so we'll give it just maybe a minute here. And if not, we can address while we're waiting. Go ahead and pop in a question or two if you have it. But while we're waiting, I know there was 1 or 2 questions that were popped in our entry forms. We can also address that while we're waiting. I know one question that was asked is Amplio web-based or an app? In the submission forms beforehand, is user pass name required? It is web-based. You are not required to set up username or password to keep up with. We integrate with school information systems such as Clever ClassLink. So for example, once our IT team, school district's IT team establishes the connection between Clever and Amplio, then both school staff and students are able to use a single sign-on method. on the school district's Clever Launchpad. So very similar to a lot of those other apps out there that are in the general education space that my son uses for his school. Very similar single sign-on with Google, something similar, takes you right in. Is there any other questions though while we are waiting? Just feel free to pop them in the chat. And Perry, let me know if anything else hops in. I know we're at the end of time, and I apologize we didn't leave a ton of time for questions. While we're waiting to see if there's anyone else that has questions, I do want to take that opportunity to really thank you guys genuinely for joining us today. I hope the session gave you at least just some tools, some permission to kind of slow down, put some systems in place that fully support you. And before we wrap, I just want to say that one of the reasons that all of us became SLPs is because we love to talk. Don't we? We love to talk. So it makes sense that we want to talk to you. We want to hear about your districts. We want to hear about your jobs. We want to speak with you, whether you're an admin, an assistant, a CF, a lead SLP, whatever you are. That is what we, Perry and I absolutely love to support and talk to you and learn about you. So please reach out. Please reach out whether you're in any of those roles, and know that we'd love to hear about what your school looks like, what your district looks like, how we can support you, how we can help you. The contact information is there. Know that likely I'll be reaching out to you as well. That's just a reality. And yeah, thank you for joining us today. I'm pretty passionate these days about helping our fellow SLPs just as much as I am about helping students these days. So let's connect. And if there are no other questions, since we're a minute past time, we will adjourn there. Thanks, everybody.
Not seeing any others, but yeah, thank y'all so much.
Have a good rest of your
Yeah,
day.
hope
And
everyone's having a
we'll
great
be in
day and a
touch.
great summer.
Bye, guys.
Bye.